Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we got everything from Beyonce to lockdowns. Yes, the lockdowns may be coming back. They already are a thing in China. Do you want to get into Beyonce?
Not really, but yes.
Maybe before we do, we've posted a new video about Sydney Sweeney.
Yes,
Why don't
on
you
this channel.
Why don't you talk a little bit about it? Because our English videos don't get much traction. So if you are interested in it at all, please take a look at it to help the view count kind of go up so it can have a snowball effect.
Yeah, so I did see a lot of discourse about Sydney Sweeney, but nobody was really, at least from what I was seeing, talking about the impact of CRT or critical race theory, where it came out of, from the critical thought coming from the Frankfurt School. So I kind of go deeper into it about that and how policies like we've seen for the past 10 years have affected brands in general as well.
Yeah, she's trying to say she takes an analytical approach to the Sydney Sweeney.
To everything I try to do.
Most things.
Hey.
Not when it comes to talking to me. Okay, let's go into this Beyonce story.
Yes, so apparently from Vibe, Beyonce shows off her pool skills in sparkly new Levi's ad.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking into this to see what kind of eye color she had, and supposedly she has hazel green eyes. So she has blonde hair, green eyes, and she's white. Can you show the X picture really quick? And this is kind of what I'm talking about.
She's Kardashianified herself.
There's going to be no backlash on the blonde hair, green eyes, white girl here, but when it comes to Sydney Sweeney, that's all they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't understand why all these celebrities really trying that hard to look like Kim Kardashian, but with Beyonce, when her new like cowboyness and trying to be like a cowboy, I don't know, it just annoys me because once again, would that be cultural appropriation? Because she has one culture and now she's taking another one. So
well, it definitely is cultural appropriation, but nobody's going to complain about it. Cultural appropriation isn't a big deal, and that's the thing. It's some crazy nonsense the left kind of likes to lean into and makes up to fake outrage and climb that totem pole.
So yeah, she might have a song titled Levi's Jeans, but her connection to that particular article of clothing just got more formal. She posted a video with the ad, including her music, so we can't play it. And it's like a collaboration. In the clip, she is portrayed as a pool shark playing pool and wearing Levi's jeans, and this is part of the campaign as well. Kind of reminiscent of, Sydney Sweeney's campaign, which came out first. I don't know when this was shot, because obviously from production to actually bringing an ad campaign, to the people, it takes a while. So maybe they were shot at the same time.
Well, no, because she had other jeans ads before this. She's constantly been in jeans ads. So the fact that she's never gotten backlash before Sydney Sweeney, after Sydney Sweeney, and I don't think she ever will. This Sydney Sweeney thing's getting blown way out of proportion. It's a little bit crazy, but...
And I mean, I don't know, I do prefer the Sydney Sweeney ad because of the also aesthetic change we've seen just lately. But with this, I don't know. I've never liked Beyonce. I've always been pretty anti-Beyonce myself. I don't understand the hype over her. Or I mean, Destiny's Child was good when I was younger, but it's too overblown. It's just regular generic music. Well, I think almost an AI could make.
Well, I definitely do understand it. I've always kind of liked her. I think she's fallen off now. She's not making good music now like she was before. But why is she so good? Because she had the top producers in pretty much the hip hop industry, whether it was Kanye West, Jay-Z. Jay-Z also gave her access to almost every single great producer in the modern era. So of course her music's going to be good.
But also with like the Lemonade album and the whole hype that was surrounding it, and then every other album since, and then her tours, which haven't been selling as well right now with the whole Cowboy Carter, and her trying to, have new eras, kind of like Taylor Swift did, and Sabrina Carpenter, and everybody else is also trying. I don't know. I don't get it. And personally, I do think the ad is a little bit trashy, especially in comparison to the other one we just saw.
It's a little bit confused if you can go back to the ad there. You can obviously the jeans they're putting the rhinestone kind of cowboy stuff on there, but they're trying to give an urban feel to it. Then she has the Marilyn Monroe hair, but then she has a grill in the other picture. Do you have the picture of the grill? Like the whole thing doesn't know what it is. It should really just commit to one kind of aesthetic aspect, I would guess you would say.
And because this one's coming out right after the controversy with Sydney Sweeney, it does feel like a DEI attempt to, patchwork the mess that happened with Sydney Sweeney and with all the criticism that she got, and a way to try to, soften things and say, oh, look, now let's talk about Beyonce.
Well, I don't know why they're not putting you in a jeans ad. You have that great jean jacket there.
It is actually Levi's. It's because I need to do laundry, if I'm being fully honest. I've been trying to edit and get the Sydney Sweeney get the Sydney Sweeney videos to come out. I'm still behind on the Spanish one, but that is coming out. And then on Friday, probably, or Saturday, depends on how long it takes me to edit. Once again, this is a 2-person enterprise. So we film, shoot, produce, everything, just the 2 of us. So sometimes it takes longer. But the next one will be about how Chinese cars have infected Mexico and how some of them might start exploding soon. So
yeah, and hopefully we get more than the 7 views on that one, such as the Sydney Sweeney is going. It's
we'll
not
try
going
to change the thumbnail and
too well so far.
Fixes it. Sometimes that fixes it. But yes.
Okay, we can go into the next story here. And this one came up just before I was watching somebody else's video. I forgot to write down his name because I had to go on the air right now. But he brought this to my attention, and it's absolutely crazy what's going on.
So from The Gamer, adult games are only the beginning. Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row reportedly at risk of being delisted by payment processors. And over the last few weeks, payment processors have been pressuring digital storefronts like Steam and itch.io to remove controversial adult games. However, a Zoom platform representative claimed that this campaign could go much further. One employee from the retro storefront Gaming on Linux told Gaming on Linux that during conversations with payment processors, titles like Grand Theft Auto, Duke Nukem, and Saints Row were described as potentially at risk of being delisted, confirming worries that adult games aren't the only target of this campaign.
Yeah, and we kind of talked a lot about censorship in the UK yesterday, and that's exactly kind of the root and the origin of all this. And if you think it's just the UK, this is now going to have a potential worldwide effect. I took a couple notes here, but they're saying the content's not suitable for general audiences. They're not even saying it's not suitable for children anymore. They want to completely deplatform games like Grand Theft Auto, saying they're unsuitable for adults. Adults should be able to choose what kind of content they want, number one. Number two, the main collective going after this is an Australian group, and maybe you can get the logo for me. The Australian collective, not that one. It's called Outmaking Games. So just type up Outmaking Games logo. But the Australian group Collective Shout opposes the objectifying of women in GTA. They're also listing a number of other things that they want taken out of the game, which seems absolutely crazy. Rockstar quietly removed in GTA 5 content that was transphobic because of similar NGO groups that pressured the British government and then pressured Rockstar Games directly. Yeah, this is Outmaking Games logo. This is...
and I'm guessing the out is for being out of the closet.
This is an NGO, and a lot of these NGOs that are based out of Britain and Australia have very similar logos, which was a little bit crazy to me.
Let's see what the mission is. Outmaking Games, OMG, is a nonprofit. Funny that OMG is also O'Keefe Media Group, is a nonprofit organization empowering LGBTQ plus professionals within the games industry. We strive to create a more inclusive and diverse gaming landscape through our programs, partnerships, events, education, and advocacy, fostering a community where everyone's identity is celebrated and their contributions are valued.
Okay,
well,
now,
not GTA.
Well, let's kind of get into this. And this is why yesterday when we went over the multi-layer of censorship from the UK government to the EU government to the World Economic Forum to NGOs to private corporations to the UN, all these layers of censorship make a huge impact. Here specifically, the UK Online Censorship Act is the biggest hurdle, but there are also other censorship acts within the EU, within Australia, and within Canada that Rockstar Games are going to have to jump hurdles with. But particularly the UK is the hurdle because Rockstar Games headquarters is based out of the UK, and therefore they're subject to all UK laws. But even if they weren't in the UK, If they wanted the game published in the UK, they would have to comply with the Online Censorship Act. And you'd say that, well, they can give a different version of the game. Not if they want everybody online to play the same game, which that's where the majority of these online game profits come from. So Rockstar Games is much more likely to make a milquetoast version of the game so it can go into all markets and they can have one online playing platform. And it's not just the UK here. Like I said, the EU has censorship laws, Australia, and the amount of compliance they're going to have to do to get into these countries, and the game's almost done. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. The game in its very nature is an adult-oriented game. This is also another way to potentially have the government saying, okay, we'll negotiate. We'll make it okay for adults, but children are going to have to have a facial scan or an online ID. Another hurdle here is certain games are also being censored by computer graphics card. So if you're not registered as an adult when you install your computer graphics card on your computer, the computer graphics cards are not letting you play certain games.
And it says Zoom has no plans to remove any titles and is instead exploring alternate payment options such as a wallet system, which would allow users to add funds to their account and spend them on all its products. GOG is likewise refusing to delist adult games and instead made 13 of them free for 48 hours in protest. However, Zoom doesn't sell any Saints Row or GTA titles, whereas Steam, which has removed adult games, does. And apparently 10 years ago, Collective Shout campaigned against GTA 5. Payment processors first took notice of adult games on these storefronts because of Collective Shout, an Australian political group that stands against the objectification of women in media.
And 1 second, and that's why these feminist laws that put women in a separate class and have separate laws and separate punishments for women are so they have major negative repercussions later on. In the beginning, people don't see it because they're not implemented, but then they start implementing them in the private sector with private media, things like this. Even the Mexican government is now making people publicly apologize if you say anything negative to women as a group. So more and more they get these laws passed, they don't do anything with them, and then they implement them once they've made a couple quiet precedents.
And here in Mexico, it is getting kind of scary. I do have a whole video on this channel about a football player that got censored for almost exactly that, but using the excuse of, oh, we're protecting women. Founded in 2009 by feminist and anti-corn activist Melinda Tankard-Weist, it has launched several campaigns against video games over the last 2 decades, most notably Grand Theft Auto 5. In 2014, it claimed that Rockstar's open-world sandbox encourages players to brutally end women for entertainment, calling on the game to be banned.
And the reason they go so hard after Rockstar Games, especially now, and they want to do it so close to release, they've passed the legislation this time, so there's a good chance they're going to get this game banned. And if they do, it is the biggest game in the video game industry by dollar amount. Therefore, every other game will just follow suit. And when they're in the conception phases of making these games, they'll make sure they're in compliance rather than risking losing billions of dollars. This is literally $1 billion game. And if it gets banned at the last minute, the company could go bankrupt, and it would make a big statement for these NGO censors and governments that do want censorship to say, comply with us or else.
And this is mostly, this time it's kind of coming from the UK, Australia, etc. But in the UK, with all these new laws and with all this new censorship that they're calling it protecting children, but it's not really what it is. Their own MPs are not even doing what they're asking the public to do. Because apparently, according to Politico, Britain's MPs charge VPNs to expenses as minister urges caution. Technology Secretary Peter Kyle appeared to suggest that VPN could put children at risk.
Yeah, and they're using children as the excuse to bring censorship, digital ID, and strip freedoms. We covered this on Monday's episode, really in depth, multiple layers of this. This particular article came up when I was researching the GTA article there, and it's very concerning. They're creating laws for their general public, but their MPs need unfettered access to the internet, so they're accessing VPNs, but putting fines and possible imprisonment on their citizens because they want to access VPNs. So this is highly hypocritical. I'm against outlawing VPNs in general. Everybody should have unfettered access to the internet, but if you are going to implement laws like that, it better apply to everybody, including the government.
Mm-hmm. So, MPs are connecting to virtual private networks, VPNs, as the UK government's tech chief pleads with Brits to use them with more care. A political analysis of MPs' expenses data shows that British lawmakers, including senior government ministers, are using commercial VPN software and have charged their subscriptions to the public on expenses. MPs with subscriptions include Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, who expends the 2-year subscription for NordVPN in April 2024, and Labour MP Sarah Champion, who in 2022 urged the then Conservative government to examine if widespread VPN usage among teenagers could undermine the protections afforded by age checks. The government has no plans to ban VPNs, which create a secure encrypted connection over the internet, but it is closely monitoring how young people use them. It's not surprising that lawmakers use VPNs, given they handle highly sensitive information daily from confidential government, blah, 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 said NordVPN's chief. And
yeah, with all these censorship laws, it's going to be very interesting how the more tech-savvy general public approach this. Is piracy going to become a big thing again? If these games are so watered down and so milquetoast in certain countries, but other countries have the real games, I could see piracy becoming a big thing. If piracy technology becomes back to the forefront, I could see it going across video game boundaries into movies, music, and everything else again, and it becoming really popular. It was really convenience that had piracy kind of die on the vine, but it's definitely making a comeback. We've talked about it a little bit. Also, content's becoming very much easier to make with AI. We talked about Fable AI today on my pop culture show, but they're getting users to basically make content for Amazon now, but they could also do it for video games. And I don't see any reason why people wouldn't make hard versions of the content that are completely uncensored.
And also, I mean, the main thing with the UK is the hypocrisy, but also the scary fact that other governments around the world are also considering these moves, and once again using the whole women's safety or children's safety as the excuse, which gets people to just accept it and then suffer the consequences. And once it has been set into law, like it's been said within the laws of the country, it becomes a lot harder to take it out.
Well, it's not just within the country, because it has so many multiple layers in the public sector, the private sector, the NGO sector. Once an NGO or a private organization can pressure a government enough to put certain censorship laws in there, they've now set the precedent for that country. If any countries are connected to that one country, then they can go to the rest of the countries. Once they set a certain precedent in multiple countries, now they can go to a body like the EU and get it for all the countries under that body. Then they can go to a global organization like the UN, and then go globally with it. So this is a web of censorship, and somebody needs to put a stop to it. I know Donald Trump and JD Vance have been speaking up, but this is starting to have major financial repercussions, not only in the video game industry, but other industries. So they need to go over to the UK government and tell them censorship needs to not be a thing. I know they have done it once. They were trying to get the tariff deal. Now that the tariff deal is kind of set up, they need to go back and apply some more pressure.
And even within this article, they're continuing to use like the children's excuse. So it says for the public too, VPNs should be seen as a standard online security measure, much like encrypted communications and secure passwords, says the head of Proton VPN. But apparently for everybody, this is what Technology Secretary Peter Kyle said. For everybody who's out there thinking of using VPNs, let me just say to you directly, verifying your age keeps a child safe, keeps children safe in our country. So let's not try and find a way around, he told the BBC.
Yeah, what keeps children safe are their parents and people actually actively parenting their children and deciding, oh, I don't want you playing Grand Theft Auto, so you're not going to play it, setting those rules. And if they manage to skate outside of those rules outside of the house, for the most part, a parent should be able to parent their child the majority of the time, and that will have a greater impact. That being said, if a parent does want their child to play Grand Theft Auto, that should be their perspective as well.
Their prerogative. And also, this is once again letting the government parent your children instead of you doing your job. And we know what the government's plans are. But they said banning VPNs is not on the cards yet. I just want to urge caution in how people use them. And they said, we make no apology for holding platforms to account to ensure they prevent children from bypassing safety protections. This includes blocking content that promotes VPNs and other workarounds where they are aimed specifically at younger users.
Yeah, but we also covered the fact that they're trying to make this content not suitable for general audiences. So this has started as the government wanting to parent your children and society's children, and now it's going into them wanting to parent you as an adult.
To parent everybody.
Yeah.
Set rules for everybody. So we'll continue to see how that works around, but there is another worrying news trend that's coming up.
This just popped up on Fox News right before we went on the air as well. I thought we would talk about it because there are some related stories.
So Fox News says the CDC has issued a travel warning over a viral outbreak in China. Does this sound familiar to anybody? That is spread by mosquito bites.
And before we get into this, I just want to talk about some related subject matters, and that is the Lyme disease that's supposedly going around with Hollywood stars like Justin Timberlake, Justin Bieber. There's like 8 or 9 supposed American stars that have this Lyme disease. All the symptoms of the Lyme disease are the exact same symptoms of this mosquito bites. In China, they are currently locking people down that have this disease. They're putting them under mosquito netting and not letting them leave the mosquito netted area. Supposedly there's 7,000 cases. In Canada, we have another story of like, it's not necessarily lockdowns in the same vein, but they're no longer letting people in the forest, which is crazy. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's get into this one first.
Breaking tonight, a viral outbreak in China prompts the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, to issue a travel warning. More than 7,000 cases of this disease have been reported so far. State Department correspondent Jillian Turner has details tonight.
And pause it real quick. I don't want to get throttled, so we'll pause it quite a bit. Last time when the jibby jab era came out, China had refused to report in the beginning how many actual cases they had. And then when they did report, they severely underreported. And that's why there was widespread contagion around the world, if you believe that's even a thing. But that being said, you cannot really believe the number of reports that are coming out of China necessarily.
State Department. Good evening, Jillian.
Good evening, Brett. The CDC, as you mentioned, is warning Americans traveling to China about chikungunya. It is a virus that spreads to humans through infected mosquito bites. It can cause severe illness with symptoms that mimic pretty closely dengue fever and Zika virus, mostly found in Africa. Here's what the CDC says about it. They say most people infected get better within a week. However, some can have severe joint pain for months to.
And a lot of those symptoms that they're saying here, like they're saying, oh, it doesn't cause death, but a lot of these side effects are side effects people are actually reporting that got to the last jibby jab. So is this an excuse to tell people that their symptoms are something else other than what they are? I'm just kind of putting that out there.
Years. Other symptoms include severe fever and fatigue. The outbreak now is in the Chinese province Guangdong. It's near Hong Kong, with more than 7,000 cases reported so far, prompting some pretty dramatic measures to contain the spread, like mandatory insect repellent blasts for people entering the area, mandatory property checks for stagnant water, which attracts mosquitoes, and when found is now punishable by fines or even arrest.
And this is a crazy way or a good excuse to spray entire cities with chemicals. You don't know what are in these chemicals. They've talked about people that were non-compliant with the vaccine last time, that they have an airborne version of this already developed. So
to get this, they're quarantining you in hospitals with mosquito netting and not letting you out for a week. These are the kind of draconian responses we saw with COVID. We're seeing it again.
The CDC says Americans traveling to 8 other.
And these are other countries that are supposedly infected with it as well. So Mexico is on the list, which.
Yeah. I mean, it is mosquito season right now because it's been raining like crazy, but I don't know if I haven't really heard much about this in Mexican media yet.
No, not at all. And that's, I mean, there is a lot of crazy things that's kind of coming out in the media lately, from space invaders coming to Earth being put in the mainstream media. A lot of people are thinking that the government is actually creating a psyop to see the general response of people and monitoring that through AI. So
other countries are also at elevated risk of exposure to the virus, even if there is no current outbreak there. People at risk for more severe cases of chikungunya include newborns, seniors 65 years and up, as well as people with diabetes or heart disease. Now, the good news is that unlike COVID, deaths from this disease are exceedingly rare. You can also protect yourself by getting vaccinated against it or by preventing mosquito bites in the first place through all the usual mechanisms, insect repellent, netting, wearing long sleeves, and staying in air conditioning. Brett?
Well, that was the end, yeah?
That's it, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, the symptoms are exact same as Lyme disease, which is crazy as well, but we'll kind of leave it there. I just wanted to report on that because it's an emerging situation. So let's go into the next article. And the amount of news that ended up coming up today was pretty crazy.
And this has changed headlines quite a few times. So now Global News is saying Mexico's President Sheinbaum says no need for bilateral trade deal with Canada because a Canadian delegation came here to try to convince Mexico to set up a bilateral trade agreement with them to avoid and skirt around the U.S. But Mexico got a 90-day pause on the tariff talks with the U.S. just recently, and as I warned on my Monday show and on our Monday show, it was best for them not to, get involved with Canada right as they're getting this extension that almost no other country got from the U.S.
Yeah, and we talked about the Canadian delegation coming down here. The Canadians were bragging about this, how they're going to put pressure on the United States. And previously, in the beginning of these negotiations, when Canada was trying to get a deal with the United States, they were talking crap about Mexico and the Mexican population.
Like has happened before as well.
Yeah, they were saying how much better than they are. We're equal trading partners with Mexico, but we're not like them. We're actually the United States' friend. The crazy things like this, people were saying, are not just people, politicians in Canada were saying. I have said to this point that Sheinbaum, as much as I don't like a lot of her cultural policies, she has handled these trade negotiations with the United States extremely well. She has more hoops to jump through than any other country, because this has to do more than with just tariffs, but organized crime, the border, other things are being negotiated into this deal. Okay, let's go into this.
But yes, so this is what Global
And the Canadian News is was trying to originally brag how they made a deal with Canada. Then they took down all these articles, and these articles are no longer existing because
I think there's one here from CTV, yeah. Because so this originally is what CTV said.
Because the independent media in Canada started reporting on it, so the mainstream media was then forced to kind of rewrite their articles and admit their failures.
Because here, for example, initially, what time was this? 1:20 p.m. So like 5 hours ago, CTV had said Mexico seeks more trade with Canada in face of Trump tariffs. But I mean, now they're admitting.
I took a screenshot of that in case they took it down. Yeah. It's a bunch of false reporting in Canada. This is an extremely touchy subject in Canada because the Canadian economy is on the hair's edge of collapse right now. The housing market is already starting to do that. The jobs market, every indicator right now, Canada desperately needs a trade deal. They are trying to not tell the public the truth so there's no real panic and people don't start leaving en masse.
So it says Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Wednesday ruled out a bilateral trade agreement with Canada when asked about the possibility following what she called a very good meeting with top Canadian government ministers a day earlier. We have the trade deal with the United States, Canada, and Mexico. There is no need, Sheinbaum said during her morning press conference where she said she discussed expanding direct trade with Canada. Sheinbaum also confirmed Prime Minister Carney will soon travel to Mexico for direct talks, but no date has been set for that visit. Tuesday's meeting was a preparatory meeting for Prime Minister Carney's visit, and it was a very good meeting, she said. She said an expansion of direct trade with Canada was among the topics discussed, but clarified that did not mean a separate trade deal from the USMCA on free trade, also known as CUSMA.
Yeah, she has daily, or at least Monday through Friday, public appearances she makes with speeches kind of saying what's going on in the government, which I do like. A lot of people don't like it, but she said there's no need for a separate trade deal with Canada, which I'm sure Trump is going to like. That's going to help their negotiations. Mexico, kind of in unison, is doing everything to cooperate with the United States to get the best trade deal they can. Canada is doing everything to sabotage their trade deal. So it's going to be very interesting in the end if this actually does make a difference when their trade deals come to fruition. Mexico did get the 90-day reprieve from Trump. Canada didn't, but I'm very interested to see in the final outcome of these trade deals, kind of what happens.
I kind of just want to see if we click on this one, did they change the headline or not? No.
And
They kept it up.
this is actually very good international publicity for Scheinbaum. Every independent content creator, especially in Canada, but the United States as well, is putting Mark Carney on the cover with a crying face, and then Scheinbaum is there looking very powerful, and they're talking about how he's messing up these trade deals while she's doing a very good job. And in this particular situation, I have to somewhat agree with most of them.
But yes, they know they did not change it. And yeah, I mean, for even within Mexican like news, opinion, and people that write opinion articles, and it usually very against Trump. There's like Trump derangement syndrome in Mexico, just in the collective elites of the media and whoever writes opinions. But with this, they were actually kind of saying, wait and actually get a good trade, like telling to Sheinbaum, wait until you can actually maybe get a good trade deal. Because if you go ahead and go with Canada first, that's just going to collapse everything like it almost did the last two times they tried to do the trade agreements.
Well, and I've also talked about Canada's like really shifty policies. They've been really bad to Mexico in a lot of ways in their public statements against Mexico, trying to sabotage trade deals with the United States, number one. But number two, in the past, Donald Trump and his first administration wanted to make a trade deal with Mexico specifically and not Canada. Mexico demanded that Canada be included in the trade deal. And then Canada tried to cut them out. In the end, it ended up being all three countries. That being said, Mexico really needs to stand on their own 2 feet and not allow Canada to have an alternative trade deal with them that could lock them into certain policies that would give Canada priority over the United States, or do something to anger the Americans that the Mexicans really aren't thinking would anger the Americans, but the Canadians know that and would be able to use that in their trade deal. I see the Canadians trying to get a trade deal with Mexico more as a sense of they want to sabotage the trade deal with Mexico and America in order to get the best deal they can.
Because they've already tried to do that before. But it also shows, I mean, how shifty the Canadian media is and how they're trying to tell their own people a very different narrative than the rest of the world is. I mean, if we remember also with the Mass Graves hoax and all of that, I mean, most of the world was already reporting that nothing was found, while still today in Canada, they continue to push that. And with this, I mean, it's slightly more sensitive because it's giving Canadians and Canadian voters who voted for this idiot man more, fodder to say, oh, he's doing a great job, when in reality, no.
And not just that, the level of propaganda from the Canadian media with this trade deal is more propaganda than I've ever seen in my life. And why is that? Because there is a huge separatist movement in Canada that is gaining a ton of steam. If even one of these three provinces actually separate, and they're talking about starting to schedule votes on these things, like dominoes, one province after another will fall in Canada. So the federal government is doing a full court press with the propaganda wings of their media outreach to kind of put the best possible spin on everything that comes to the trade deal.
Yes, and they're terrified. And if you didn't know, the media in Canada is basically almost all subsidized by the Canadian government, the mainstream media.
To the tune of billions of dollars.
Yes, so they just write whatever the government tells them to. But in other trading news from Mark Nixon, breaking, Trump just hit imported semiconductors and chips with a 100% tariff. Apple and chip makers are returning to the U.S. Mark Carney from Canada said Canadian supplies and semiconductors to the U.S. He's wrong. We barely make any 0.09 of total imported to the U.S.
Yeah, and I originally just grabbed this in case I didn't have time to find an article, but I got a couple articles on this. So why don't we go into the two articles?
This one?
Yep.
So many ads. So Trump announces Apple investing another $100 billion in U.S. manufacturing.
So yeah, Apple's going to invest $100 billion in U.S. manufacturing. You may think that's an absurd amount. It's not. They did more than that when they went into China. So this is a huge investment by Apple, but it's on par with the type of investments they've made with China. Trump said as long as these tech companies that need these chips start making manufacturing investments and major manufacturing investments in the United States, they would not tariff them currently if they use chips from other countries, which they kind of currently have to until the transition's been made into the United States.
Says Apple CEO Tim Cook joined President Donald Trump at the White House on Wednesday to announce a commitment by the tech company to increase its investment in U.S. manufacturing by an additional $100 billion over the next 4 years. This is a significant step toward the ultimate goal of ensuring that iPhones sold in the United States of America are also made in America. Trump said at the press conference, "Today's announcement is one of the largest commitments in what has become among the greatest investment booms in our nation's history. As part of the Apple announcement, the investments will be about bringing more of its supply chain and advanced manufacturing to the United States as part of an initiative called the American Manufacturing Program, but it is not a full commitment to build its popular iPhone device domestically."
Okay, and that being said, they now have the trillions of dollars. They literally have trillions of dollars of all these major companies from around the world wanting to build manufacturing plants in the United States. Some of them have already started, but it's very important at this crucial stage that Trump keeps energy costs low to make it cheap for them to manufacture these facilities. He also needs to try to keep interest rates low so they can get loans to manufacture these facilities. That being said, there's talk about him putting major sanctions on Russian oil through India, through China. I think it's a lot of talk because in the end, if he does that, oil prices are going to shoot through the roof. He needs to keep them low if he wants to make this manufacturing transition smoothly.
And then also, Trump vows 100% tariff on chips unless companies are building in the U.S. President Donald Trump said he will impose 100% tariff on imports of semiconductors and chips, but not for companies that are building in the United States. Specifics.
And yeah, this kind of goes into the point that I just made, that as long as you're attempting to invest in the United States for the manufacturing, he's going to let you slide until that manufacturing is built.
Specifics about the plan, such as how much U.S. manufacturing a company needs in order to qualify for the tariff exemption, were not immediately clear. The remarks came after Trump touted the commitment by Apple that we just spoke about.
And this is a lot like the Rockstar Games thing, where you had these NGOs going after Rockstar Games and specifically GTA because it's the biggest game. And if they can get that thing censored and it goes bankrupt, then every other video game manufacturer is not even going to question. They're just going to censor because they don't want to go bankrupt as well. It's kind of the same thing here. Trump wants to go after the biggest players like Apple, get them to start moving their manufacturing, but he wants it to be smooth, so he's willing to give an exemption until that manufacturing is up and running. He knows it's going to take a few years.
And a lot of people have been very doubtful about what would happen if they actually do try to manufacture at least some of that in the U.S., how the expenses would get paid, how much more expensive it would be for consumers, for the companies themselves.
Yeah, I have a different feeling on this. A lot of people are saying, well, if they get rid of all the illegal aliens and other things in the United States, how are they going to have people to manufacture? Well, the people that do have the manufacturing jobs, those jobs will actually pay a lot of money, just like they used to with the auto sector, number one. But number two, they'll be able to keep up with the amount of quantity they need, not by human power, by robots, robotic arms, robotic power, robotic supply lines, and manufacturing lines. And if the United States does make a transition into robotic manufacturing assisted by humans with a much lower population base, it could actually work into the advantage of the United States overall. So it's going to be interesting what happens in the next few years, especially in the U.S., if he manages to make this manufacturing transition happen.
And then I don't have a segue for the next thing, but Davos. From George Christensen, the Davos downfall, Klaus Schwab, architect of the Great Reset, has been exposed, millions spent, reports rigged, staff abused, but he wasn't taken down by conspiracy theorists, he was taken down by his own people.
Yeah, and we don't have to go into the thread there. If you go to the top, go to the top. If you do want to see the thread, that's the gentleman you can go to. We have an article that's not going to go through exactly the thread. The thread's actually a lot better, so I do recommend it. But let's talk about this article a little bit, which is highly related.
Hold on, because now it's not letting me read it.
Okay, if we can't read it, we'll go back into the thread and we'll read that instead.
Yeah. Because it wants me to pay. I'm not going to pay the Telegraph. So Schwab told you to own nothing, to eat bugs, to give up your car, your privacy, your gas stove, all to save the planet. But behind the scenes, Moe, 40 massages, first-class ticket flights, 50 million villas, all paid by you in one way or another. Last month, a leaked WEF report confirmed Schwab's abuses, 1.1 million in shady expenses, trips to Venice, Seychelles, Miami, and Morocco, forum-funded chauffeur on private holidays, 14 in-room massages, that is weird, 15 million Geneva state equals personal playground.
The big concerning thing here, I'm not as concerned with the way he was spending this money, although because I believe it was a nonprofit, perhaps that was all inappropriate. But the way they were manipulating data, which was extremely concerning. Let's go back into it.
So Schwab rigged the forum's global competitiveness report. He told staff the UK must not see any improvement. Why? Because pro-Brexit voices might use it as proof that Britain didn't collapse. He literally cooked the books to attack democracy.
And this is what's going on in a lot of the Western world with statistics, with economics, and that's why people are starting to not trust science and economists and things of this nature. The United States keeps more statistics than any other country, but they also manipulate more statistics than any other country. We can see this happen under the Biden administration. As much as I like Trump, it's still happening under Trump somewhat, so... It's just in the opposite way. So because Biden wanted to show the statistics in one way and Trump might want to show them in another, you're having this dramatic shift in a matter of a couple months, which just isn't necessarily possible. It's not to say Trump was lying or maybe Biden was lying, but statistics are being manipulated. That's quite obvious, not just in the United States, but with NGOs, non-governmental organizations like the WEF, especially the UN as well.
So he's also protected by his friends. He's also protected his friends. Modi's India was about to drop 20 plus places, so Schwab ordered the rankings changed to protect the relationship. In 2022, one country's score looked bad, so he ended the entire report. This wasn't research, it was propaganda. Then there's the culture war, the culture inside the WEF. Pregnant women were sidelined, older women were pushed out, late night emails to young female staff. One staffer says he put his nether regions in her face. Another, he ran it like a fiefdom. WEF employees were so broken, they formed a private group called WEF Refugees to cope with the abuse, hypocrisy, and intimidation under Schwab. This is a man who claimed to be a father figure. This is Davos.
Okay, and that's pretty good. But the main concerning thing about this is the way they were manipulating statistics, report, economics, and just general statistics of countries on a global basis. The UN is doing the same thing, and a lot of other countries are doing the same thing as well.
And other countries. Speaking of South Africa's economy in state of emergency, says the ANC. The party's National Executive Committee has just concluded its 4-day meeting at Germiston Civic Center.
Yeah, and South Africa is in a lot of trouble. They try to act tough with these tariffs with Donald Trump as well. They talked a good game, and now the entire economy of South Africa is collapsing. They can't replace it with the Chinese economy because the Chinese are already maximally invested in South Africa. They are the number one investor, but if the number two investor, which is the United States, pulls out, that economy collapses, especially with the level of corruption that is built into the South African political system.
So the African National Congress, ANC, has categorized the country's economy as being in a state of emergency. This came to light as the party's National Executive Committee concluded its 4-day meeting at Civic Center on Monday. The ANC's highest decision-making body in between conferences has been discussing all issues from the state of government, of national unity, United States, U.S. tariffs, and other local election preparedness. In his closing address, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa said the organization remains concerned about the state of the economy. We also characterize the state of our economy as being in a state of emergency that requires drastic action. Our focus on an inclusive and resilient economy is important as we begin this month of August, Women's Month. The financial and economic inclusion of women is vital to the empowerment of women in our country.
And we know how they feel. We know how they feel and treat women within South Africa. It's crazy. They've had more than any other country. They had the most chances. And first it was USAID money that got cut off, which was absolutely crucial for South Africa, but it was a corrupt organization. And politicians over there just started flipping their lid and talking so much crap about Donald Trump that when when the farmers issue came up, that farmers' lives were being ended in this racial style genocide in South Africa, the president of South Africa was brought into the White House specifically, and this was addressed. He completely denied it, basically called Donald Trump and J.D. Vance a liar about the thing when the video evidence was played for him in front of the entire press. And then he went home and made more denials of this. And then they just keep moving in the wrong direction. When they threatened to have tariffs, but when the United States threatened tariffs on South Africa, they talked tough like it wouldn't matter, like they had a strong economy, they could rely on China. And then they implemented that, and they've implemented multiple tariffs now on South Africa and taken away their aid, and that's why you're seeing their economy collapse. They should have cooperated a lot more with the United States, and this is why I'm so interested with the American and Mexican trade deal, because Mexico is cooperating with the United States. Canada is not. I'm hoping Mexico gets a good trade deal of this. So it's a good indicator. If you do cooperate with Trump, does it make a difference in the end? Okay.
And let's see if it'll make a difference for Switzerland, because president of wealthy Switzerland rushes to Washington to try to avert steep U.S. tariffs. This is from the AP.
And Trump slapped a 39% tariff on them, which is going to severely hurt their economy. At least she's aware enough to go directly to Washington and try to solve this. Mark Carney did the opposite of that. I believe Sheinbaum, if this happened to Mexico, she would have done the same thing this lady is doing. I think it is the right move. This could severely impact millions of people within that country.
So after weeks of working with U.S. officials to try to avoid hefty tariffs on Swiss goods, negotiators from Switzerland got assurances that a deal was all but done. Swiss businesses vowed to pour tens of billions in investment in the United States in the coming years. Still, President Donald Trump said no to any special deal. Now, a scramble is underway ahead of Thursday, the deadline for when the whopping 39% tariff on Swiss products announced last week goes into effect. Switzerland's President Karen Keller-Sutter and other top officials traveled to Washington on Tuesday to try to convince Trump that the measure, among the highest from the Trump administration, was too much and could cut profits for famed Swiss industries like chocolates and watchmaking.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting if this works, because it looks like they're taking immediate and drastic action, and like they are now cooperating when they might have had some pushback in the beginning and made some statements that may have angered the Trump administration. But if he does cut down the tariffs with them first, that's an indication to Canada that they're on the wrong track when it comes to Trump. So,
And they are.
okay.
But yeah, so this meeting has not yet fully happened, so...
Yeah,
but it's interesting to see.
I'm kind of putting South Africa, Switzerland, Mexico, and Canada, the countries that don't really have trade deals and that are all having different strategies with the U.S. Just kind of see how this turns out. At least in the interim, Mexico is one of the most cooperative of the bunch that don't have a trade deal. Trump has even stated the only reason they don't have a trade deal is this is about more than just tariffs. It's about organized crime as well as the border and a few other issues. So that deal was naturally going to take longer, he said. But he did give them a 90-day extension. So even at this point in the negotiation process, Mexico is being treated a little bit better than a lot of other countries.
Mm-hmm. And then the next one is about Palantir. I also don't have a good way to segue into it, but from ABC News, Palantir books its first $1 billion in quarterly sales after dodging U.S. spending cuts. Shares of Palantir Technologies appear to be heading toward another record high after booking its $1 billion in quarterly sales and raising its outlook for the year.
Yeah, and Palantir keeps coming up in the media. They're the new Halliburton. They're the new military industrial complex. You're seeing Silicon Valley merge with the military industrial complex here, merge with the security state of digital ID, potentially even digital currency and monitoring of the U.S. population as well. It's very concerning how deep Palantir has their hooks into the entire Trump administration at this point, especially J.D. Vance, but they have funded a number of other politicians that are some of Trump's closest advisors. That being said, every other industry is kind of having cutbacks except for Palantir. Palantir, that was a $1 billion profit margin. So,
am I crazy, or like did this name not really come up until very recently?
Yeah, before it was the traditional military and industrial complex that would get the major contracts. Palantir is really the Silicon Valley's attempt to go into the military industrial complex, not only modernize it, but go into adjacent industries like the monitoring and digital identification of all U.S. citizens and all global citizens. And they're a huge propaganda wing of the government as well. I mean, they're in every aspect. Palantir is probably the most concerning thing about the Trump administration. And why are they so concerning? It's not necessarily even with the Trump administration. They've set up so the next generation of MAGA is completely owned, run, and operated by Palantir money. So as much as I like a lot of the deep state and a lot of the corruption that's kind of being weeded out by Donald Trump, at the same time, you can see this new underbelly of this new deep state potentially being forged right in front of our eyes. And it's important that we call these things out, and hopefully other people echo the sentiment, and the people can maintain some control over the government.
And also, power never lets go of power. Sometimes it just shifts it and moves it further away so you can't complain about it. But shares of Palantir Technologies appear to be heading toward another record high Tuesday after booking its first $1 billion in quarterly sales and raising outlook for the year.
And this is what's so concerning. A lot of the people that are surrounding Trump were anti-Trumpers for a long time. And this is J.D. Vance. He was a never-Trumper. He did nothing but talk shit on Trump. Then he was funded by Palantir. Palantir funded Trump's campaign and a lot of campaigns that would help the administration. They directly funded a lot of Trump's adversaries to make sure that they weren't reelected, so there wouldn't be pushback when Trump did get in there. Peter Thiel's the owner of Palantir, or the CEO of Palantir. He was a liberal. He's an extreme progressive. It almost looks like they're putting on this skin suit of conservatism in order to control the next generation of MAGA potentially. So when you start implementing this security state in the United States but not enforcing it, people don't even realize that it's being built up around them. It's this digital walled fence that's being built. And maybe once Trump's gone and the next administration gets in there, then that's when they spring the trap, and the whole thing has been built right under everybody's noses.
Because a lot of people have been cheering for a border, be it digital or physical, around the U.S. And sometimes, yes, you have a border, but it might not be to keep people out, but also keep people in.
Yeah, Trump did.
And we saw what happened during
Trump's doing a fine job with the border, building the wall. He doesn't need Palantir in this digital state, this digital ID, to build the freaking wall and keep people out. You can do that without a digital ID.
But apparently, its $1 billion quarterly revenue haul was fueled by a 53% spike in government sales, despite massive spending cuts under President Trump and the Doge ones led by Elon Musk. Doge has had zero negative impact on Palantir's U.S. government business, which achieved its fastest growth rate since the second quarter of 2021.
Yeah, and let's just remember, we've moved from Canada to Mexico. I was a big Donald Trump supporter in Canada. I still am here in Mexico. I like a lot of the things the administration is doing, but there are concerning things, and we do have to take a critical eye at the administration and call things out, because Trump's not going to be in there forever, and there are good people surrounding him, but there also are bad people surrounding him. So keep a watchful eye on the administration, especially Palantir.
Similar to the first time.
Yes, but similar to the first time. The first time they kind of froze out the administration. This time it almost seems like they're preparing for what comes after, and they're building kind of what the progressive agenda was before, but they're doing it under this conservative skin suit. And I have a bad feeling they're going to spring this digital era trap as soon as Trump's out of office, through J.D. Vance potentially. And I used to be a huge supporter of J.D. Vance. All the stuff coming to the surface with Palantir has really made me take a second look at him. So.
And then next you had, I believe it's a Substack article about Canada.
Yeah, do you have it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was just wondering if you wanted to go there or not. From Rochelle Rempel Gardner, Bill C-412, Keeping Kids Safe Online, Keeping Civil Liberties Intact. A new bill provides clear safeguards for kids online, protects civil liberties, and moves the conversation about how online safeguards out of political backrooms.
Okay, yeah, and this is interesting. This is a different strategy. And when you have a government like the Canadian government who's so authoritarian and trying to offer up 25 years in jail for people that utter hate speech online, even more draconian than what the UK is doing. That being said, those laws haven't been passed yet. The government is constantly pushing them through, and they're getting rejected, but then they're putting even more draconian bills in. Bring the article up again if you can. This particular bill, if we can go to the top. And that's what I'm doing. In this particular bill, what they're trying to do is get ahead of the government. So this prohibits digital identification for age verification, and it includes parents and kind of puts a lot of onus on the parents themselves. Everything in the bill I don't like, but the people that created this bill are really saying we need to get ahead of the legislation, kind of box out what the government needs to do with legislation of our own, but we're going to have to make some concessions within our own legislation. So although I don't like legislation for countries like the US, who has constitutional free speech, and a country like Canada, this may be the better alternative. I hate to say it, but maybe.
Do you want me to go into?
Yeah, go into it a little bit, and then we'll head over to RUMBLE.
So it says there's now a growing body of evidence of potential negative consequences to children being online without safeguards, and internationally there is a growing consensus for legislation to mitigate these impacts. The burning question for many is now, what should those safeguards entail? The bill I tabled today, so this was last year, aims to answer that question for Canadians. Bill C-412 is the first bill in Canadian history to comprehensively lay out a vision for what protections should be offered to children to keep them safe online while preserving Canadian privacy and empowering parents. Liberal Bill C-63 punts much of what would actually be required.
And we can go down
online.
a little bit.
Okay. To where?
Maybe where it's underlined.
Here?
Yeah, where it's underlined.
So Bill C-63 has little chance of building consensus of becoming law, predominantly due to lack of support for it even in left-wing circles, and the Liberals' dogmatic attachment to including a reinstatement of the highly controversial Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act, rather than set up a costly $200 million new bureaucracy that would move the conversation about online protections for children far into the future and behind closed doors where tech lobbyists could manipulate the process. Bill C-412 proposes a clear, immediate legislative duty of care for online operators to keep kids safe when they're online. It kind of sounds like the UK one a little bit.
No, it's not. And this is the thing. You're reading the wrong parts of the article. If you keep going down, there it starts talking about parents and the parents' responsibility, the fact that you're not allowed to use digital ID with the thing. I couldn't highlight it because I don't have the access to highlight digitally, but
I'm trying to find...
Because I read through the whole thing, and it does have good points and bad points. There is a lot of onus on parents.
The bill requires parental consent before the use of an operator's platform by a child, defined as an individual under the age of 16 years, parental controls, and the ability for parents to opt out of or override those controls' default settings. It also requires operators to clearly and prominently set forth on their platform the safeguards that they offer to kids and how they comply with their legislated duty of care, which gives parents more information about what a platform does and how their kids might interact with it before allowing them to use it. These requirements acknowledge the diversity of Canadian families families and children, leaving the decisions for how children interact with the online world in the ultimate hands of their parents.
And it says there, so the bill seeks to establish a novel set of checks. So it's not a hard set of checks where you need a digital ID or a digital face scan, things of this nature. I don't agree with censorship. I would prefer to leave it how the internet was back in the 90s, but we're in an age, especially in Canada, where they're so connected to the EU and the UK. Those countries have already set precedents, so it's naturally going to be even more draconian within Canada if you let the government set the laws. This is an attempt by the people to say, okay, we're willing to negotiate and concede some ground. But overall, I think if a bill like this passed in Canada and this kind of set the boundaries of what was acceptable, it's going to be much better than what they're going to get if the government gets to dictate what's going to happen.
My main question would be, how would the online platforms verify who the parent is, though?
No, that's the question. And it said, but it said it was a novel set. So it's just like when you click, yes, I'm 18, it would probably be something like that. So.
Because it doesn't say what they would put in as these new novel
No, yeah,
things.
I'm aware of that, but.
But I mean, again, that still continues to be like the main issue, as in how much do you would the government allow the parents to, be parents, and how much they want to still keep control, even if it's just of those parents or of those children.
Yeah. And I really think it's the parents' duty, not the government's duty. I think the government is pushing parents to work way too many hours to financially support themselves, so parents don't even have the time to parent anymore. And the government is trying to say, no problem, we'll step in. Okay, no problem. We'll step in and we'll parent you guys as adults as well. And that's what they're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go over to RUMBLE now.
Yes, so it's the same channel name, and we'll see over there in a few seconds.
Well, there's nobody watching, so.
There's 6 people watching.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
On mine, it said 0.
And mine it says 6.